Are you studying poker by doing hand reviews? Yes? No? It doesn't matter. This video is for you. It is incredibly easy to review your hands poorly, and if you're currently using this form of study, this video will surely optimize the time you spend studying. If you're not doing hand reviews, you should, and this video will teach you how. Today, I'm going to let all of my viewers in on a secret. We're going to learn how to outstudy your opponents by using the questions method. Let's talk about why we need a solid method to study poker. Poker is an incredibly complex game, and it is very easy to get distracted and lose focus of what's really important. If you don't have a good study method, then chances are your studying is probably inefficient. You are losing EV compared to how much you could improve your game with every hour spent learning. We need a method that prevents us from overcomplicating poker. This is a lot easier said than done. As the quote says, to complicate is simple, to simplify is complicated. With this, I present the questions method. The questions method is a robust system designed to keep our focus on questions that will improve our game in the fastest way possible when answered. We solve our overcomplication problem by narrowing our focus down to learning high EV concepts. Hand reviews are an exceptional tool when done properly, as we get to review the hands that we've actually played with an entirely new perspective. If you haven't done hand reviews before, I urge you to try this method, which I will now describe in depth. Let's learn how to learn. It's a simple three-step process. We start by reviewing our hand and writing down any questions that we may have about it. These questions can be anything, ranging from the purely theoretical to the maximally exploitative. Anything goes. I usually end up writing between 2 to 5 questions on this step. Next, pick 1 to 2 questions that are likely going to impact your game the most. If you're not sure which ones these are, just pick the ones that are likely to be the most common ones. Lastly, answer these questions. Try to learn concepts that will probably come up over and over again. I refer to these as broad concepts, and they are almost always higher EV to learn than anything. By writing down our questions and then answering them, we are being selective about what information we spend our time learning, and this allows us to learn much faster than our opponents. Let's now look at an example hand. Now this is a hand that I recently played. I'm going to review it and write all the questions that I have as I'm actually reviewing it in real time. So you can see that our opponent from the cutoff opens to 2.5 big blinds, and we 3-bet. Our opponent calls, and we hit a flush draw on the flop. Now I use half pot sized bet here, and I'm just wondering, what should my flop c-bet size actually be? Did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? I don't know. What should our flop c-bet size be? Just write that down, right? Our opponent goes ahead and calls, and we complete our draw on the turn. Now I end up betting using around B70, and I'm just now wondering, what does our overall turn strategy look like? How frequently are we betting? What size are we using? What hands are checking? What hands are betting? A little bit curious about that. And our opponent calls. And we have a king complete on the river. So again, I'm going to write down what is our river value threshold. So what is the weakest value hand that we're actually betting on the river? And then what slow plays should we have in our range? You can see that I end up betting, and my opponent calls me with pocket 5s. And I end up losing the pot right over here. So we have a lot of different questions here, and what's important to note is that the questions that you write are specific to the things that you're interested in studying, or the things that you think you should study. So my questions are going to look different from your questions are going to look different from someone else's questions, and that is the whole point of this method. We're trying to personalize it and hone down the focus on what's highest EV for you. Now that we have our list of questions, let's move on to step 2. In this step, we will pick the one highest EV question for us to answer out of this list. If you're doing this method on your own, you can pick 2 questions and that's totally fine, but to keep things simple for the video, I'm just going to do 1. You can select questions however you like. If you feel that you're struggling constantly with just one question over and over and over, that's probably a good sign that you should try to focus on that first. I'm fairly confident playing most flops and turns, so I will delete the first 2 questions. I also recommend staying away from river spots and focusing more on common spots. Here, even if we learn the correct river slow plays, we probably won't get a chance to execute them very often. Because of this, I'd rather answer the threshold question because that comes up a lot more often for me. I'm going to delete the slow play question, leaving us with just one question that we will now answer in step 3. Thankfully for me, this question is really easy to answer. I've loaded up the Spot and GTO Wizard, which is a really good study tool. As we can see, our value threshold looks to be pocket aces with a spade. It's difficult to even call this a value hand because it's so incredibly thin, but being out of position, we often have no better choice but to jam our marginally strong hands at a low SPR. Of course, we're not concerned with just the threshold right here. We want to learn the broad concept that we can apply to many other boards. We can do this by looking at the value threshold on similar boards. I've loaded up a couple here. On this board, you can see that we are still jamming our pocket aces, even though it only has 52% equity. On the following board, we can see that our top pair, King-Queen, and our overpairs continue to jam. And on our last board, we can see that our strongest top pair, which is Ace-Jack suited, and our overpairs will jam. And so, just like that, we've discovered a broad concept. On these somewhat connected flush closing rivers, we can still jam most of our strong pairs at a low SPR. We can stop here, or we can continue our investigation by node locking, looking at more boards, etc. If we do decide to continue, we may elect to repeat the questions method by again writing down all of our new questions and selecting the highest EV 1 or 2 to answer. And that's it. That's all there is to it. We can now avoid going down the overcomplication rabbit hole and instead focus our time and energy on learning concepts that have high applicability in-game. Try this method out, even if you've not done any hand reviews, and I guarantee you that you will learn and improve quickly. Thank you so much, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.